You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. If you've walked through Westlake Park recently, perhaps you've noticed something new. A statue of Swami Vivekananda, a philosopher and Hindu monk credited with introducing yoga and the Vedanta philosophy to a global audience. It was unveiled a little over a week ago. That statue is a gift to the city from the government of India. People from India represent more than 10% of Washington's foreign-born residents. As of 2024, nearly 95,000 King County residents were born in India. According to the Consulate General, which opened in Seattle a little over 2 years ago, the statue is part of a broader cultural diplomacy initiative. To talk more about the relationship between India and our region, I'm joined by India's top diplomatic representative in Seattle, the Consul General, Prakash Gupta. Mr. Gupta, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be on the show.
Yeah, it's great to finally meet you in person. When I saw the Consul General was opening a couple years ago, I thought that was a pretty cool move for Seattle to be the home of, really a region-wide effort here by India. Just really quickly, can you talk to me a little bit about the services that you provide at the consulate, and you serve many different states as well?
So, as you said, we came in 2 years ago. The announcement by our Prime Minister was made, I think, early 2023, and we came in November of 2023. It was grey and gloomy, typical Seattle weather. We parked ourselves at the Fairmont Hotel trying to set up a new mission from scratch. Our first few months went towards office hunting and house hunting. Normally, wherever we go, we have a space to work from and a space to live. So this was a very unique startup of its kind to set up India's new diplomatic outpost in Seattle. But we've been very lucky. We got good support from the city government, and obviously the large number of Indian American community leaders who are here assisted us in getting us up and going. In terms of the services that we provide at our consulate, I would say a consulate by definition is there to provide consular services, which is services which your nationals need for passports, visas, OCIs. OCIs are Overseas Citizenship of India cards, attestations. So consular services is the primary function. And it is given to both Indian nationals and American nationals who want to travel to India. But that's not why we came into Seattle. We came into Seattle because our leadership felt that if India-US relationship is going to be the most defining relationship of the 21st century, then its critical pillar is going to be technology. And given how much Seattle contributed to high-end technologies, particularly artificial intelligence, quantum computing, aerospace, and the fact that a large number of these tech giants are based in the greater Seattle area, and as you know, a sizable proportion of its workforce comes from the cities of Bangalore, Hyderabad, cities in Delhi, or cities in India. And it was very important that if we wanted the relationship to prosper, we made sure that there is a seamless convergence between Government of India's interests and US government's interests in these sectors. So since we came in, we tried to improve on the bridging what I call the technology gap and making sure we worked together to improve the synergies in these fields. And I'm very happy to let you know that this year, when India hosted the first Artificial Intelligence Summit in India, we had the biggest delegation from across the world coming in from Seattle. So everybody who matters in the tech space was there, from Amazon, from Microsoft, Mr. Bill Gates, everybody else was there to contribute to it. So the second reason I would say is technology that brought us here. And in terms of the other roles, we also, like any other embassy or consulate, do a lot of building people-to-people ties. And the best way to connect people is to have them experience each other's cultures firsthand. So we have been able to get a lot of delegations from Seattle, particularly from the area that I cover, visit India. As you said, I cover about 8 states of the Pacific Northwest, which is a large geographical area.
Yeah, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Nebraska. That's a lot of ground to cover.
So we've been able to send about a lot of delegations in the course of last 1 year to visit India firsthand. A very big delegation from Greater Seattle partners visited India this year towards the end of January. About 35 people from Port of Seattle, from the mayors of Redmond, Bellevue, and others. And they went to experience India firsthand and see if they could if they could strengthen commercial relations, trade, and bilateral exports. So that got a fillip with that delegation visit of the Greater Seattle Partners. From the Washington state alone, most of your viewers may perhaps not know, but India gets a lot of cosmic crisp apples from Washington state into India.
So glad to know that, because that is, in my humble opinion, the best apple.
And I agree with your opinion, because I also had that for breakfast today. So as I said, we do a lot of roles: trade, technology, tourism, culture to culture, people to people, counselor, and making sure that the relationship remains thriving. The consulate was not here before 2 years. So we did make sure that in the last 2 years, we have reached out to every stakeholder who matters within Seattle, within the Greater Seattle area. And the introduction that you gave just now about the statue of Swami Vivekananda is one of our attempts to make sure that there is a better understanding of Indian culture, Indian perception, Indian arts, heritage in this part of the world. So that's why we brought it here.
Let me ask you a little bit about why Swami Vivekananda. For those who are not familiar, what was the importance of bringing a statue of him here to the Seattle proper?
A very good question. Swami Vivekananda came first time to the United States in 1893. He came to Chicago to deliver an address to the World Conference of Religions, which was happening in Chicago at that time. And he began his speech in that era by a phrase saying, "My dear brothers and sisters of America." And everyone at that point of time got up and gave him a standing ovation. He was India's first philosopher monk who introduced Hinduism to the West, who introduced yoga to the West, who kind of introduced Indian concept of spirituality to the West. And you would have grown up listening or reading this book called The Clash of Civilizations, etc., etc. But in my view, he was one of those first philosophers from the East who came and most beautifully explained in very simple terms what the Eastern concept of spirituality, of tolerance, of unity, and that all religions lead to the same path meant to Indians. And it was one of the most moving speeches of that time and era. That cut through the people of Chicago. Another interesting fact, since you've mentioned it, right next to Westlake Square, where Swami Vivekananda stands, is another park, right next to it. It's called the McGraw Park. Mr. McGraw was the second governor of Washington in 1893, the same year when that speech was delivered. And if some inputs were to be believed, he had also heard about that famous speech then, the governor of Washington. And now these two people are very close to each other in terms of monument space, Westlake Square and McGraw Park. To put in a nutshell, why we brought it here is we do believe that Seattle is a city that embraces multicultural diversity, that is also home to a large number of Indian Americans. To them, it means a lot that one of the world's first global spiritual monks, the city has chosen to host and give him a pride of place. So we have put a very nice QR code next to the monument there. Anybody who wants to listen to his speech can just scan it. And now in the last few days, we have seen that Google has created a page for it, that it's become a very highly visited tourist spot in Seattle. People stop there because not many people know what the monument is about.
Yeah, but you can hear his voice.
Hear
when
his
you're
voice,
standing
you
there.
can scan it and read about him. So to me, it's a good way to introduce the concept of Indian Oriental culture, Vedantic thought, as I said, yoga and spirituality to this part of the world.
You brought up the tech industry, and I want to talk about a big change that's been happening when it comes to immigration policy and the tech industry, and that's having to do with H-1B visas. Indian citizens are the top beneficiaries of H-1B. Local companies like Microsoft and Amazon have long been some of the top recipients of them as well. But the Trump administration has made a lot of changes to the program, making it more expensive for employers. There's a $100,000 fee that applies now to new H-1B visas, new people coming into the country. How are Indians coming to the United States affected by this?
Look, you are very right that a large proportion of the tech force, at least in Seattle from the tech giants, comes from India, particularly from cities like Hyderabad, Bangalore. But if you read through the nuts and bolts of this legislation, technically it does not impact the existing workers who are here. The new regulations in terms of the increased fees applies to the new lotteries that were supposed to commence from later this year. Obviously, it's been viewed with a little sense of concern by those who would be, say, future employees of these tech giants. Again, we do know for a fact that how a country allows people to come into its territory is the sovereign prerogative of that country. So they are willing to abide by the rules and regulations that the government of the United States prescribes. But I can tell you for a fact that at the end of the day, there is no disputing the fact that the world's best talent comes from India. It is, I think, IMF's own prediction that close to 30% of the global workforce is going to come from India in the next 3 to 5 years, for sure. We are a nation of 1.43 billion people, out of which 65% is young. So we are talking about close to 900 million plus young people in the ages of 18 to 35 who are English speaking, who are IT skilled, and are raring to contribute their energies to global growth and to the prosperity of their own places. So look, talent will find a way to express itself wherever they best find a nurturing environment. And in that sense, I hope we continue to recognize the importance of merit and making sure that the best talent succeeds. And that I'm very hopeful will continue to be the case.
The New York Times reported that last year, 2025, arrivals of Indian students at American universities fell by 44%, a huge drop-off. Are we seeing a major shift in the ability of Indians to come to the United States if they want to study or work? Or is there, simultaneously, is there a shift in the desires of Indians to come to the United States to study or work?
First, in my view, given the widespread of the India-US bilateral relationship, again across all sectors, higher education is a very key component of our bilateral cooperation. It is an undeniable fact that a large number of Indian students used to come to the United States, to their centers of excellence, to study, to pursue their undergraduate programs, graduate programs, master's programs, and so on.
Very recently, they became the largest section of foreign students in U.S. universities, Indian students did.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even in the University of Washington, we have a sizable number of Indian students. University of Seattle, this whole greater Seattle area, Washington State University in Spokane, Pullman, all these have Indian students, and particularly more so on the East Coast. So that's obviously a fact. I do agree that there has been a drop in the course of last 1 year, particularly because we are given to understand that they have faced some kinds of issues in the visa processing for F1 student visas in the last 1 year. We do get a lot of kind of representations from US universities that when they go and recruit Indian students for US universities here, if they say that if they recruit, say, about 100 students a year, the numbers who actually make it through the visa process have come down in the last 1 year. So that's a concern for US universities, and same for Indian students. It's not that Indian students do not want to come to America. They would like to come to America, but they would also like to abide by the rules and regulations that allow them to come to America. And while they are here, they pursue their courses of what their preferences are. So I disagree with the latter part of your saying that Indians do not have the desire. They certainly have the desire, because as I said told you in the beginning, talent will find its own way. So if these are young, bright students, they will find the space where they think is best suited to upgrade their skill set. There would be some difficulties on the way. These days it may be perhaps what is being cited in the news as visa-related issues. But I think at some stage, both countries are mature enough to make sure that the driving force behind the India-US relationship is people-to-people ties, and it will overcome these minor obstacles that are on the way.
if the U.S. has set up new obstacles for example, Indian students to come to the United States, where do those students go? Do they go to Europe? Do they go to China? Do they go to elsewhere in the world?
So first is, these obstacles may not be India specific. These are for all countries across the world.
Absolutely, yeah.
So when it comes to Indian students, they'll first look at options of what should be good for them in India. And again, Indian engineering colleges, the IITs and the Indian Institutes of Management, the pyramid of getting into them is so steep that the numbers who apply and eventually the numbers who make it is like one in several thousands. And that's what, when they don't make it, they look at other options across the world. They look at US, they look at Europe, they look at Australia, they look at centers of excellence in Southeast Asia, places like Singapore.
So like Johns Hopkins might be the fallback.
So I can't speak for that student, but I do believe that they look at their choices, they make applications and see where they get the best proposition in terms of what offers them the best option to pursue their higher education. I would repeat that I don't think that Indian students are yet giving up on the United States, and they're looking very positively, as long as they have to make sure that they abide by the rules and regulations that colleges so prescribe.
Yeah, I think it's more, I'm wondering about the talent that we lose when obstacles are put up, and whether that talent ends up perhaps, thriving in other parts of the world, maybe, eventually graduating and then, starting businesses in other parts of the world and not here in the United States as much anymore.
I guess that's a call for the U.S. government to make, how it looks at. But again, the history of the U.S. has been that it has been welcoming of good talent. So that's for the United States government to decide.
We need to take a quick break here. I'm Libby Dankman. You're listening to Soundside, and we're going to have more of my conversation with India's Consul General in Seattle, Prakash Gupta, coming up next on KUOW. Welcome back to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman, and I'm here with India's Consul General in Seattle, Prakash Gupta, the very first Consul General from India in Seattle. And I wanted to switch gears here, Consul General. I want to talk a little bit about the sentiment in the United States when it comes to immigration. There has been this feeling, and I think it's borne out by surveys. For example, the Carnegie Endowment surveyed Indian Americans in 2026 and found widespread perceptions of bias, frequent encounters with online racism, marked levels of personal harassment or discrimination. Although this, according to this survey, that has remained relatively steady since 2020. Comments by, certain members of the right, for example, Stephen Miller, who is the president's deputy chief of staff, said of Indian immigrants, quote, "They engage in a lot of cheating on immigration policies that is very harmful to American workers." And I think this was all kind of part of this immigration debate. And it shows like a protectionist element in our politics that is leading to a perceived increase in anti-Indian bias. Do you hear something like that from the people that you serve here, the Indian diaspora in either the Pacific Northwest or the wider region that you serve? Or do you have any thoughts when you hear something like that about what that means for Indians here in the United States?
Look, we have noticed trends like these picking up in the social media, particularly against a set of people who are here in the US. In terms of these concerns actually translating from Indian community reaching us, we don't have yet those numbers or evidence to say, look, I'm getting these concerns from the Indian community. We do have seen this chatter in the social media space across regions. But again, at the end of the day, we have to be very clear. How a country decides on establishing its immigration laws is the prerogative of that sovereign country. And anybody who is coming into a foreign soil must make sure that it follows those laws and regulations when coming into any country. So in our view, it's very important that we accept and abide by the laws and regulations of the host country wherever we are. And that's what our advice to all people who are coming in to US is. make sure you have a valid visa, make sure you stick within the bounds of the time frame that has been specified in the visa, make sure that the purpose of the visit matches the type of visa that you are on. If you are on a tourist visa, you are not supposed to do employment on a tourist visa. So these are things that we advise people who sometimes approach us, and make sure that they are in touch with the right stakeholders of the US Embassy and follow those guidelines. But again, immigration is an issue which I think every country has a sovereign right to decide on its rules and regulations. And every foreign national who is coming must make sure that they adhere and abide by those guidelines.
Do you have any personal feelings about it? Just when you say that you've heard that or observed that the social media chatter has increased. I mean, that makes me personally very sad. I grew up in Redmond. I was, classmates and friends with sort of that first generation of Microsoft influx of talent from all over the world. And that includes, a large number of South Asian families who moved there and, have made like a beautiful community. And I think that the ties between our region and India are really strong. And it doesn't reflect my personal experience hearing about that online chatter, but I wonder if you have any reflections on, the dangers of that or what it could mean, when people spread that type of hate.
To be honest, in the greater Seattle area, Redmond, Bellevue, Kirkland, Issaquah, Kent, Sammamish, Renton, I have actually come across fascinating examples of Indians bonding so beautifully in the cultural space with their American friends. I have been to religious ceremonies in temples where I have seen perhaps an equal number of American people standing by Indian people joining in the religious ceremonies. I have been similarly to pure US functions where Indian nationals have joined in and celebrated US festivals with the same fanfare. In fact, last year we did the India Day Parade on Independence Day on 15th August here in downtown Seattle, where we showcased a cultural unique form. It could be a dance form, it could be an art form from each of the 28 states in downtown Seattle. And the maximum number of people who were watching this were pure Seattle people, not Indians. Indians were the one who were showcasing it, but the crowd watching in thousands was... So I would say there is a great receptivity for how Indians have conducted themselves in the greater Seattle area, how they have contributed not just professionally, but even in the cultural, literature and art space to enriching where they have been. And they have given back also to the area. So I would say what I see in terms of the trends in social media space on kind of hatred or negative thoughts being circulated, I would say it is not coming from Greater Seattle, at least to my knowledge. It's coming from certain parts of the US where people feel differently when they see a different culture kind of having a friction point there. But not at least in the area that I cover. And also not significantly in any of the 8 states that we look after. So I would like to leave it at that.
Before we go, I wanted to circle back to the message of Swami Vivekananda and his new statue at Westlake Park. His message is one of, religious tolerance, pluralism, as you say. There is a trend that has been observed in India right now, and that's under the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his BJP party. And that is that observers say that he has moved India more towards a Hindu nationalist model for the country, rather than the secular pluralist model. I think that there is obviously a lot of complexities here, but I wonder if the final thought here you could kind of share, what is the message behind having Swami Vivekananda be the statue here in the United States, especially considering his message of pluralism?
Again, an excellent question. First, let me put it on record that I beg to disagree with the perception being attributed in the media space or what you allude to about the Prime Minister. The fact of the matter is that India is a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. That's how our constitution spells it out. All religions are treated equally. You must remember that India is also the world's largest democracy. another very important point which relates to the message of Swami Vivekananda is India is perhaps the only country which is home to all religions of the world. So while Hinduism may be the overarching faith being practiced by a large number of Indians, India is also home to Sikhism, to Buddhism. That's where Buddhism originated from. The largest number of Buddhist believers from Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia come to India, where these centers exist. So you name a religion and it has found home in India. India is another of those beautiful examples which has a more than a 10,000-year-old history, way longer civilization, and perhaps the only country in the world which never took recourse to kind of invading any country. We do believed always that our greatest asset was in our all-embracive culture. Without sending armies, people have been won over across the world by Indian spirituality, by Indian food, by Indian films, by Indian yoga. So there are many things across the world which people relate to when they talk about India. Swami Vivekananda, way back in 1893, kind of represented this cosmopolitan outlook of what Indian spirituality meant to the world. So when he came here, he came with a message of peace, of tolerance, and a very fundamental underlying message that all religions of the world have the path to the same Almighty. It's the forms in which you practice may vary, but we are all leading at the end of the journey to the same path. That's the message of peace, unity, and tolerance that India brings to the global stage. And we hope that with this monument now firmly placed at the Westlake Square, Seattle radiates this message out to the rest of the world.
Prakash Gupta is India's Consul General in Seattle. May I say, Consul General Gupta, we've talked about AI and sort of the disruption that it's done in the tech space especially. One thing that I can be firmly sure of is that diplomacy is not something that is easily replaced by AI, because being in person, having a personal presence here is obviously hugely important. And Seattle, has a consul general here and has that physical presence, which is so key. So thank you very much for being here and for sharing all of this.
Thank you so much for having me and giving me an opportunity to engage face to face. Again, diplomacy at the end of the day is how you connect people to another people. And in spite of all this talk about virtual conversations, VTCs, which we experienced, we do still believe that there is no substitute to an in-person meeting with a person who you would like to connect or bond with. Thank you once again, and I hope today we have been able to bond with some of your listeners on this platform. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org or on your favorite podcast app.